Right, just quickly, can you see that?
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent, right, thank you, Leon. So my name's Ian. I am a Senior Development Manager at Creative Assembly, and I'm going to talk about getting into the games industry, and I'm going to focus mostly on getting a job at an existing studio. We'll touch on some other stuff, but yeah, there's a lot of ground to cover, so I'm going to go quite quickly. Hopefully that's all right. You can keep with me. So, very quick introduction to myself. I've worked for all of these companies. I've worked on all of those games, and I've had all of these job titles in nearly 19 years. I've been around quite a lot. Started as a programmer, did design, and most recently in production. And why should you listen to me on this topic? I think quite a lot of people in the games industry could do an excellent talk along these lines, but why listen to me? Well, first of all, as you've just seen, I've got jobs at games companies, so I've been there and done that myself. I've also been rejected by many more. I've been rejected, but that's fine. And I've been on the other side of the table as well. I've hired people at entry level and hired experienced people as well. As part of that, I've reviewed thousands of CVs, done dozens of interviews, and also advised people on their CVs and helped them apply for jobs. And it was going through this experience that made me want to put this talk together, because I've made lots of mistakes I wish I didn't make, and I've seen people that's applied for the jobs I've been hiring for make very basic errors that are really hurting their chances of getting the job that they really want. So hopefully this will go some way to preventing that from happening to all of you listening in. Hopefully it's helpful. So I like to start from first principles and ask a very fundamental question, which is, why do companies hire people in the first place? There's a load of happy people outside the Creative Assembly office in Horsham. So companies hire people because they need work to be done and need people with specialist skills to do it. And the way you get hired is that you need to convince the person or people who is making the hiring decision that you're the best person available to do that work. It seems pretty obvious when you put it like that, but it is very easy to lose sight of why the job is why people are hiring in the first place. And it will help you answer a lot of questions yourself if you go back to first principles. If anything is unclear or you're not sure what to do, to say, what am I actually trying to achieve? I'm trying to convince someone that I've got some skills. So a lot of this is having the skills in the first place. And many of the talks today have been, excellent talks about, how to improve your skills. But this talk is more about sort of communication and sales and communicating the fact that you have those skills to a particular person who you want to hire you. In a way, you're selling yourself. Yeah. So you want to apply for a job at a company, you need to know where to apply. You probably know a bunch of games companies. You might play their games, be familiar with them for all sorts of different reasons, but it's easy to miss them. And GamesMap .uk is a Ukie thing, I think. It's fantastic. Has all the companies in the UK. There's a bunch of filters you can zoom right in. I mean, I've worked in Guildford for years and years, and through this website, I found studios in Guildford I'd never even heard of. So yeah, that's a great way of finding places to apply to. And you can go to their websites. Many have a careers section you want to have a look at. For example, Creative Assembly has a careers website that everyone should go and have a look at. And here's a screenshot from it I took a few days ago. We had 23 job openings in a bunch of different disciplines. So yeah, that's a way of finding places to apply for and the job openings. We'll go into more details on those in a second. There are a bunch of other options. Networking has been mentioned earlier today. That's actually talking to people. You can find opportunities that aren't advertised through networking. Recruitment agencies, they exist. I'm not going to go into that much detail. Starting your own studio, again, not the topic of this talk, but if you do that, more power to you. Maybe you'll hire me one day. That's really awesome. Freelancing, becoming an influencer, there's a bunch of other things, but we're focusing on getting hired in an existing studio. So you'll see a list of job descriptions on websites, which will explain what the job is and what you'll be doing. Is that right for you? Does that match your skills and what you want to be doing? there would be at different experience levels, and sometimes it's not quite clear what the right experience level is. But if you're, if it's your first job, look for words like trainee, graduate, junior, associate, similar things. Words like senior or experienced, probably not for entry level. And often they'll list out the skills they're looking for, as well as the description of what the job is. So I took this screenshot again from the Creative Assembly website. Get another plug in there. Not all companies do this. Job descriptions vary, but it is quite a common thing to list out essential things and desirable things. And if you match these, you go ahead and apply. But my message is you don't have to tick every single box. I mean, roughly 60% is okay. Some are probably more important than others. Like for this one, this is for an experienced programmer role. Sounds like you pretty much have to have C++, but most of the rest, if you do some or part of it, then that's good for you. Don't assume the worst. Sometimes things can be quite subjective, like a deep understanding of networking models, whatever they are. Maybe your understanding of networking models is, reasonable, but you don't think it's deep. But don't assume that disqualifies you. Go ahead and apply, because you've got very little to lose. Apply for any role that's relevant to you. Sometimes there'll be more than one that's suitable for you. There could be different teams in a larger studio who are both hiring similar roles. If you apply for roles that aren't relevant, it does undermine your credibility a bit, because sometimes that's visible. And if you've applied for, say, you're a junior programmer and you've also applied to be marketing director and CEO, it does undermine your credibility. But yeah, feel free to apply for anything that you match with to 60%. Then when you apply, what happens to your application? There's usually a standard process that companies go through handling them. They go through several stages before they give you an offer. For example, I just knocked this up very quickly. This is just an example. So you might apply, and then you might be sent a test, and then you get to the phone interview stage, and then they talk to you in person when we're allowed to talk to people in person again, and then you get an offer, and then you get hired. And then different companies will do things in different order. There might be several interviews, there might be no test, there might be multiple tests, but for the purposes of illustration, this is just to show you that there are multiple stages you go through. And some roles get hundreds of applications and others very few, for a bunch of different reasons. So 100 people might apply, and then only 30 get to do the test, and then 10 phone interviewed, 5 in person, and then the best, ideally, candidate at the end gets the offer. And at each stage, a bunch of people are rejected. And it's your goal not to be one of those who are rejected. Sometimes the applications get filtered by someone who's not the specialist in your field, so HR recruitment people, and they will reject on the basis of, if you're not eligible to work in the location where the job is, or if it's an experienced role and you clearly don't have the experience, they'll reject it before it's shown to the person who makes the actual offer. But the decision maker could still have dozens of applications to look at, and they're busy people, and say for 100 applications to look at, 1 minute per application is still, over an hour and a half it takes you to go through. So they don't have much time, and and the easier thing to do is just to reject someone if something isn't clear, or they they can't see a good reason to move them to the next stage, which in some ways might not seem fair. You'd hope that the person would take the time to see the person behind the application. But if the application is badly structured or confusing, or if things are missed off, then even if you're really good, then you're probably going to get rejected, and that's the fact of the matter. So but you want to avoid that happening to you. So we're going to talk about all the bits and pieces that come along with an application. So part of this is a CV. I'll assume you all know what these things are, and here's a secret: most CVs are terrible, like really terrible. Even mine's pretty bad. And if you put a little bit of effort into yours will stand out. I recommend to get just a generic how to write a CV book from a library or bookshop, wherever, and just do what it says, and that will already put you ahead of a majority of people when it comes to the CV. And going back to the first principles I mentioned earlier, remember that you are trying to convince someone that you're the person who is going to do the work that they need doing, which means that you want to put all the important and relevant stuff at the top, really obvious, and less relevant stuff, miss it off or cut it out altogether. Many people think that there has to be a standard order that a CV goes in, where it's always work experience first, and then education, then skills, and then hobbies or whatever. But if your work experience isn't relevant to the role you're applying for, and your education skills are, then turn it around, put the important stuff at the top, and the fact you worked in a bar. I mean, I used to work in a bar. That's kind of good, but it's not the most important, not the most relevant. So lower down less prominently. Include everything that's relevant, both in terms of the skills and experiences you've got. I gave advice to someone who was writing their CV, and it turned out he'd done 3 months work experience at a game studio, and he didn't put that on his CV. I mean, don't miss off anything that is impressive in any way. And be concise. 2 pages max, 1 page, perfectly okay. Remember, the person looking at it doesn't have much time, and if you make it difficult for them to find the information by burying it under lots of pages, then you're probably going to get rejected. Longest one I've ever seen, 17 pages, unbelievable. Don't do that. And it's a living document. You'll be writing your CV throughout your entire career. Keep getting feedback, keep improving it. When you do new stuff, add it in, and every time you apply to somewhere, you'll get better and better. Portfolios been mentioned quite a lot today. For some roles, they're absolutely essential, particularly design and art, but possibly others as well, and can be more important than CV. I know some lead artists will look at someone's portfolio, and only if they like it will they actually look at their CV. So same advice applies. Put the best stuff right at the front, really obvious, front page. Don't bury it. And also get feedback, continuously improve. The same. So it's always getting better and better, which means your chances of getting the job you want continue to get better and better. And also make sure it's easy to access. If it's a website, most of them are. If it's a really complicated URL, or if you have to create an account and log in, you're just putting up barriers in between you and the person you're trying to impress, which will harm your chances of getting the job. Quick note on cover letters, quite old-fashioned really, but not all companies ask for them, but some do. You might as well use the opportunity to sell yourself, to tell people what your skills are. But when you do that, be concise. Again, people have limited time, so burying information under lots and lots of words is not going to help. And it can feel a bit weird writing a cover letter because you're just repeating things that are on your CV. If you do that, don't hesitate to do that. It's all good stuff. You might as well reinforce it. Tests. Now, a lot of people are caught out by these because they don't expect them, but a lot of roles will require some kind of practical test to kind of demonstrate that you have the skills they're looking for. And they're also using to compare people, because if everyone does the same test, they've got something that's comparable between different people. And they vary tremendously. They can be done on site or at home. They can be done before, during, after any point in the hiring process. They vary. Using myself as an example, these are some tests that I've done when I was applying for jobs. I spent a whole day of writing code on a whiteboard, wrote a game design document with a pen, old school, bug fixing this deliberately broken OpenGL game. So some tests are kind of homebrew. The people at the studios make them themselves, or there are third-party companies that have websites you log in. Some are timed, some are not timed. If they're not timed, it's like, how much time do you put into it? But if you want the job, I put a lot of time into it. So they vary a lot, but my message is just do your best, because if you skimp on it, if you don't put in a good amount of effort, it'll be obvious, and it'll be a reason that you get rejected. Interviews, lots of fun. Actually talking to people. Being interviewed is a skill. The more you do it, the better you get at it. So use every opportunity that you have in order to practice the skill of being interviewed. Get friends, family members to ask you questions like it's an interview. And remember, when you walk away from the interview at the end, you want the interviewer to know what all your skills are. You've got a list of good points about yourself. You want to make sure you get those across. So when you're asked a question, answer the question, but also feel free to add in extra bits of information that you think are impressive and relevant. And do research beforehand. Know what the company is. I mean, you've probably done that earlier on before you even applied, but particularly for an interview, know what the company does, what they make. If you can play their games, play them a bit. Maybe if you know the names of the interviewers, then research them a bit without getting too stalkerish. And be positive. This is just a kind of general point that, as well as wanting someone to do work, the people who are hiring you will probably spend a lot of time with you, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, whatever it is. And if you're, moaning or complaining and not a nice person to spend time with, it's giving them a reason not to hire you, even if you're really good at what you do. So here's a list of things to avoid. Again, I'm using myself as an example because I've made a lot of mistakes, and here are some of them. Argue with the interviewer, related to be positive. Similarly, complain about previous employers, didn't get that job. And actually, I've turned up to an interview not knowing what the company actually made or did, and I kind of had to ask them throughout the interview. That was embarrassing. But yes, do some research, be positive, and practice. And be sure to ask questions yourself. Partially this is because, like I said, you've been spending a lot of time at work, and you want to know that this is a place that you want to be and that you want to spend your time. And also, it shows the person interviewing that you're keen and interested in what they're doing. Once you get to that, you get to the end of the process, and there's often a lot of waiting, and this is frustrating. It can be anxiety-inducing, but it is inevitable. It can take a long time. Message the company, send them an email if you haven't heard for a few weeks. Say, have you got any feedback for me? Is the standard way of saying that. I've read in some books about interviews that it's a good idea to message the person who interviewed you and say thank you and ask extra questions, but I don't really like that, to be honest, when people do that for me. But anyway, waiting. And rejection happens a lot. The majority of applications get rejected. If, say, I said earlier, 100 applications for one job, only one person gets the job, that's 99 rejections. But don't worry about it. Absolutely, do not worry about it. It happens to everyone, even me. I've got rejected a bunch of times. And it's an opportunity to improve your application. So next time in, you're even better. If you were interviewed, you had some interview practice. If as part of the rejection, they gave you some information about what you could work on, some skills they thought you were missing, you can work on those skills and add them to your CV and your portfolio. And next time in, you've got a much better chance of being successful. And at the end, success, you get an offer. You don't actually have to accept it. It may seem a strange thing to say coming all this far, but it's your life. You're not obliged to accept an offer if there's something you're not happy about, or if you've got a better offer, you can always say no. But if you say yes, well, congratulations. It's just the start. Welcome to the games industry. It's an exciting world, and I sincerely hope you make it. So, thank you very much. Here's an end card about Creative Assembly, and yeah, we've got time for questions. I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
We most certainly do. Thank you very much for that, Iain. That was a great presentation. It's actually the first one. Normally we get loads of how to get your job in the industry, but this is the first one today. So we've had quite a lot of people stick around, which has been great. So I'll just read out some of these questions if that's okay, and then we'll go from there.
Yep, I'll stop sharing. There you go. Cool.
Why is it that the majority of positions advertised are for senior roles?
That's a really good question, actually, and I'm not fully sure of the answer. I could speculate, because it taking on someone who is less experienced actually costs the company, because they have to spend time training you up, and that takes a very long-term view. Sometimes a lot of companies take the short-term view and just want someone who can come in, do the job, get it done, and off they go. But yeah, that's just one thought that came into my head. There's probably a bunch of reasons that I'm not the best person to ask.
Okay, cool. Next question. So what advice would you give a woman or minority applying for jobs, considering that they're less likely to apply if they believe they do not have the experience?
Well, I think, it kind of answers their own question there. It's apply for jobs. The advice I give is the same. All the stuff I said today was universal. When the part where I said that you don't have to have an exact match on all the things they say in the job description, again, that applies to everyone. Don't let it put you off. Just get there and apply.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. What's the best way to get feedback on CVs and portfolios on a regular basis?
You need to ask someone who knows what they're talking about. I'm not good at giving feedback on portfolios. I'm not an artist, but if you know an artist who is reasonably skilled and you have an art portfolio, ask an expert. Find an expert, ask them. Don't bug them too much. Get the feedback.
Yeah, I was going to plug as well that this weekend, so the Games Careers Week is on, and they're doing a CV portfolio kind of session on Twitter, so you can submit it using a hashtag portfolio pitstop, and they will check out your portfolio for you. So maybe make use of that if you can, or not. Check out Into Games as well, because they're a very good website. I'll make sure I post some of the links for this.
Sounds great.
In the chat. Can you give examples of good questions to ask the interviewer at the end of the interview?
I mean, there's some like, what's a typical day like, which actually puts the interviewer on the spot. When people ask me that, it's like, "Oh, I don't really know what to say. As you say, one question that would be good is, what's the most important thing about this role? Like, what is, what is the thing they're looking for? Sometimes it's not really explicit in the either job description or what they say, but when they're thinking about what they're looking for, what's the most important thing, and that gets them to break it down.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a question here from Hammy, which is how do we write a cover letter without sounding arrogant?
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, sounding it's the feeling I get often when you write a cover letter is it's not necessarily arrogance, but it's sort of talking yourself up, being kind of it's a sales pitch, and you've got to be sort of very positive and not humble, but very kind of putting forward all your good points, and that feels weird to someone. Often feels weird to people because they're not used to selling things, and they're not used to being just so overly positive about, I'm awesome. Here's a list of reasons why I'm awesome. There you go. It feels a bit strange. You just got to get over it, and you are selling yourself, so you've got to
Almost sound arrogant without. I mean, you've got to sell yourself, right? Okay, cool. Next question is, what is the longest you could leave a company without accepting an offer or declining an offer, in case you were looking for responses from other companies?
They will usually start hassling you. It will vary, obviously, the company. If they've got lots of other applicants and you've got other people to choose from, they could easily go to one of the other ones. If you're the only person who's applied, they will hang on for you. It will vary, but it's often not good manners to leave them too long. I'd say a week or two, at the most.
Okay, no, that's fine. I've been trying to get into QA testing. What can I do to make my CV stand out? Is there any specific training you look for?
I'm not a QA specialist, so I don't know specifically about QA. Sorry, it's a specialist question. I can't. I can't answer QA. No. Anything you think sounds good.
I think that one might have actually been for Theo. But yeah, sorry, I pulled it across because we did ask for people to put the names before them, so I'm just reading them as I go down.
No problem.
Okay. How do you go for technical roles without a portfolio or show reel if they ask for one?
Technical roles you don't usually. Well, it's less. It's harder to have a portfolio. Here's some code I wrote, rather than here's a nice picture or here's a game. You've got to sort of describe what you've done, describe your the programming languages you've written. It's more about the CV. If you can think of a way to demonstrate that some other way, but yes, it's like portfolio is less essential for a technical role, I would say.
All right, cool. And then this is kind of the last question that I think we'll be able to squeeze in is, do you have any advice for someone seeking graduate programming roles in terms of tailoring portfolio or application content? So it's kind of links to that last one, I suppose. But
yeah, it's focus on the skills and the things you've done. I mean, it's just the general advice applies. It's whatever you think the role is. One thing you can do is if the job description mentions specific things, specific bits of tech, is that you have a look into them and have a go yourself, and then you can say, I've done this. So sorry, that's not a very good answer.
No, that honestly, this is all great. I mean, everyone here's trying to understand it all, so that's perfectly
cool.
Good answer, yeah. But look, I just want to say thank you so much for your talk today, and also for answering all of those questions there.
No problem.
Sorry for the few curveballs that weren't relevant to you.
That's all right. It's all good. Thank you. It's really fun doing these things, so thanks a lot. Hope it helps.